call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 28th day of October 2021. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Okay. Sunday, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman?
Here.
Councilwoman Lofstad?
Here.
Councilman Martell?
Here.
Councilman Bouvier?
Here.
Councilman Scavone?
All right, so we're all here. Let's start. Well, first, we're still on Zoom, which will probably continue to the end of this year. Let's figure our first meeting in January, we'll be back in person. The elevator should be done by then, and hopefully the pandemic is mostly done by then, but we'll get an update in a minute on where we stand. We're going to do an update on this little tropical or nor'easter that we had over the last couple of days from Ryan Murphy. So he's coming on, and then we'll hear a little bit about COVID, and then we'll go right to the conversation about the Tupper Boathouse. And I know we have a number of people we'll have to let into the Zoom meeting for that. So, but let's start. I guess why don't we start with COVID, Ryan, if that's okay? Ryan Murphy is our public safety director, has been our COVID coordinator, has been updating us as to where we stand with the pandemic response. So Ryan, do you want to bring us up to speed?
Sure. Thanks, Supervisor. As of Monday, we're still holding pretty steady with our COVID spread numbers for the town of Southampton. Based on the reports from Suffolk County Department of Health, we're still right around 10 new positives per day within the town. I haven't really been informed of any significant changes to the hospitals COVID census. I think they've been holding relatively around the same point as well, with most of the people that end up hospitalized being unvaccinated individuals. They have made some changes. It's worth noting, and I know we have put this up on our website, and I believe we put it onto the town's social media too, with regards to vaccinations at the hospital. So we would encourage people to just check the hospital website, also check the town website. Moderna shots are being administered on Mondays and Wednesdays. Pfizer shots are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The hours of operation at the parish center are 12 to 6, but because there has been an increase in the number of people coming to get either vaccines or boosters, they're no longer accepting walk-ups. That's the important thing to take note of. You need to go on and schedule the appointment through their portal at the hospital to just make an appointment to go in for either an initial vaccine or a booster. And we have those links posted on our website as well, the town website. So you can go to either one, the hospital website or the town website, to find that information with regards to how to go on and make an appointment on the hospital system if you're looking to get either your initial vaccination or to go and get a booster shot if you fall into some of the eligible population that can go and get boosters.
What is that, Ryan? Who can get boosters now?
Boosters are available for the 64 or 65 and over population, I believe, currently, that are at least, that I believe it's a specified period of time. I want to say it's either 6 or 8 months out from the initial vaccine dosage. And also, identified individuals that are immunocompromised or have underlying conditions, as well as some higher risk occupations, all fall into the category of eligible for boosters at this point.
And Ryan, the other question I wanted to ask you, I was over in East Hampton And if you go into any of their town facilities, they make you wear a mask, whether you're vaccinated or not. Um, we, uh, we continue to allow people into town facilities. If you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. If you're not vaccinated, you do need to wear a mask. I just want to make sure that you're not recommending any changes from that policy.
I would not recommend necessarily making any changes from the policy at this point in time, especially, based on our spread numbers. I think if we start to see the numbers increase, or we hear of, increased hospital census, which we talk about it at most of the board meetings and update on the numbers. My office is looking at the numbers, each day that they're available. The county health department doesn't necessarily update on a daily basis, but if it's 2 days or 3 days between, we're looking at them each time there's an update to just make sure that we don't see an uptick in the reported spread in our area, prepared to react and implement, changes if necessary, based on some of those increases. I think we've also put masks on. I think that we put them, I know we put masks down at the security booth at the front of town hall too, and are making them available to people should they choose to wear a mask, even if they are vaccinated. We wanted to give people that, option and have it available there for them. And as you said, people that aren't are supposed to be wearing masks when they're inside the town facilities. So I think we're pretty good on track where with what we're doing right now. But we are prepared to, kind of throttle that up if need be at a moment's notice, to react to, any increased spread that we happen to see. And obviously with the holiday times coming up, that's something that we're going to be paying particularly close attention to make sure that we don't start to see the spread that we saw last year around the holiday times.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Any other questions for Ryan? Ryan, do you have the hospital numbers?
I have to reach out to Southampton and just see what their current numbers are. Again, I'm not aware of them seeing any significant increase at this point in time. I speak to Robert and Keith over there on a pretty regular basis, and they haven't made me aware of any big jumps.
Any other town board members questions? All right, I'm not seeing anyone. So let's switch a little bit and talk about this nor'easter we experienced. And thank you. I know you spent a lot of time making sure that I was kept up to date. So did the police, did very frequent updates throughout the storm. So I know we had some power outages and some trees down. I know the highway department was busy clearing, branches and trees from roads. So you wanted to sort of fill us in on what we need to know about the storm?
Sure. Happily, overall, we fared pretty well with this storm. And it's worth just noting that we do have another system moving into the area on Friday too. I'll stay on track with the storm that we just experienced though, but I don't want anybody to forget that we're not 100% in the clear yet with, any experiences that we might have. We definitely did have some, branches on wires and some tree branches and trees onto, roadways. At one point in time, we had a tree that was leaning over the tracks at Springville and Good Ground and Hampton Bays. MTA had to be notified to attend to that situation. I don't believe it really put any kind of significant delays on or restrictions on train service over the course of the day, thankfully. But overall, our customers without power numbers topped out right around the high 300s, maybe 400 customers townwide without power at the height of things. And if you're one of the 400 people, then obviously you weren't happy with that. But all things considered, with the number of household businesses, everything that are serviced within our town, to top out at 300. That's really not that bad, or even 400. It's really not that bad. You could get, 100 or 200 people without power from a single outage. So to only have, at the height of it, have 370 or 380 or 400 people without power or customers without power in the town, that's that's a pretty good number. And the restoration occurred relatively quickly. By the end of the day yesterday, right around 5 o'clock, I think there were only 70 customers without power town-wide, with an estimated restoration time, not too far after that yesterday. So everybody was put back online pretty quickly. And our wind gusts, really only ended up coming up around the 40 mile per hour, 41 mile per hour point, as opposed to up into the 50s, as had been suggested earlier on in the storm. We definitely took on a significant amount of rain in a short period of time. It's worth noting for everybody that in conversations with Highway, our drainage system is really designed to handle about 2 inches of rain over a 24-hour period. So if you see in the forecast that we're going to get 3 inches of rain, 4 inches of rain, or that we might in 24 hours or less, in this case, we probably had in excess of 2 inches of rain down in about 5 hours as opposed to 24 hours. You can expect that we're going to see ponding and pooling in roadways around storm drains, because the storm drains are going to get overwhelmed and they're going to need some time to let that water drain out and subside. So people need to react accordingly and take the proper precautions when they're driving, because you're gonna start to have that pooling of water along the sides of roads, and you don't want to end up going through it at a speed that you lose control of your car and get pulled off to the side or into anything in the process of doing so. But overall, we handled this nor'easter pretty well. No significant, coastal erosion that caused any problems for us that I'm aware of. And I will, double check our assessments post-storm now that we're, through that with our coastal erosion people. We took some flooding in the Flanders area and some parts of Hampton Bays at road ends, typically where they come up against the water. No areas where we saw water were areas where we didn't expect to see water. Typically we see water. We know we're going to see flooding come up with it, that we're going to see the bay come up at the end of Long Neck and Oaks and a couple of other places. And we're going to see water on Dune Road in the usual places. We've got barricades out, pre-deployed to be able to just be pulled out from the sides of the road in a lot of these places. So it was really nothing that we couldn't handle and that we didn't expect. And we're thankful that it didn't turn into anything more, and that the power outages weren't greater than what we actually saw. Overall, we did well with the storm. Friday, we expect to see rain. As of right now, we're going to see some more rain and some more wind on Friday. Currently, it's showing that we should start to see that rain somewhere around 9 o'clock at night going through into Saturday. And we're going to see wind gusts, but not as significant as what we saw in this last storm. I believe the gusts right now are only slated to top out in the mid to upper 20 mile per hour range, as opposed to up into the 40s. So hopefully, with a couple of days in between the two storms, some of that rainwater that we took on will have had a chance to drain away, and we're not going to be taking on as much rain and as much wind with the Friday into Saturday storm system that's going to move in the area. So I don't expect that we'll see any significant problems associated with that. You're muted, Jay.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan?
Yeah, Brian, I have a question. I know PSC&G, they've been pretty aggressive with their tree trimming crew. Do you know if in the town that we've done the same for limbs that might be dangerous hanging over roads or something like that?
I do know that the PSCG has been out, but I also am aware of the fact that Highway has been out doing trimming activities in different areas as well. I couldn't speak to the specific areas that they have covered, but I know that it is part of their routine, maintenance activities that they conduct along our roadways, and that they have been out doing that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I went over and looked at Mecox Bay yesterday. The water level is extremely high, and the wind was, splashing the water across the roadway at Flying Point Road. So, but I also know that they're looking to open the cut on Monday, so that should relieve the pressure there. But it was, you know, it was very high, and I'm sure Sag Pond is the same way, though I didn't get a chance to look at that. So, but you know, that 3 inches of rain, plus, you know, it all runs into the pond in the bay. So it's actually from a level of the pond, it's more than 3 inches. So you know, it can cause all kinds of problems with sanitary systems and farm fields and things like that. But I talked to Sean Cambridge, who's advising the trustees, and they're trying to execute an emergency permit to open it up on Monday. So that should help. All right, anything else?
No
All
more
right.
from me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go to what's listed as the first item on the work session agenda, which is a conversation about a possible Tupper Boathouse stewardship agreement with a group called the North Sea Maritime Center. It's a not-for-profit, and we're going to be joined by Ann Reisman, who's director of that group, and Mark Matthews, also co-director, and Lisa Combrink, who is our CPF program manager. So let's see if we can get everybody else on, and maybe others as well. Who's Sheila? I see, and we got Ted Anderson on. I see Lisa is here. So I guess Charlie's letting them in one by one.
Yeah, can do it.
There's some supporting materials that have been circulated. There was a floor plan, there's a mission statement, there was a draft IMA, or not IMA, but a license type agreement. And I see Mark is coming on. Trying to get that camera adjusted over there. Are we going to get Ann in the conversation too? Charles, do you have Ann Reisman?
I don't. I do have a phone number. I don't have Ann though.
All
There
right.
is no Ann in the
Well, maybe
attendance.
we can get Councilman Bouvier, who's been a liaison to this Tupper Boathouse project, to say a few words while we let anyone else in who needs to be in the room.
If there's anyone else that needs to be in, can they please raise their hand?
You want to talk about Tupper now? I mean, it's been a long haul. You know, we've raised the building. There's been a lot of work on it. We've had, Julie and I have been both working on this, and there's been a long conversation. This is the culmination of it. It's the licensing agreement with the North Sea Maritime. And, you know, it's kind of an exciting phase of Tupper Boathouse. It's been a long time in the making. And I mean, I'll defer to Mark and to Ann Reisman. Lisa, I know, wants to go through some of the proposed floor plans and the way some of that stuff's going to get divided up. I think the real key here is that we're able to have a stewardship agreement that that enables us to maintain the building and the division of responsibilities. I think that's what we're going to go through today. So I really don't have much more to add to it than that, except if anybody's visited the facility, it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful job, I think. So very pleased with it.
So this is the old, well, the Tupper Boathouse is located by Conscience Point all the way down, I guess it's North Sea Road.
Down at the end, yep.
At the end of North Sea Road. And It's had a
There's
few
lot of
incarnations.
associated with the marina that's there as well. You know, it's on the site that we've done.
The town acquired it some time ago when it was the Conscience Point Inn, a nightclub. And but long before it was a nightclub, it was a boat building facility. So, but I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about the history. Lisa, anything you want to say before we get started?
Yes, thank you, Jay. Good morning, everybody. Just to bring you up to date on what's happened over the last, I'd say, approximately a year on this, a little less than a year on this project. The restoration of the Tupper Boathouse would be, has been slated as a CPF capital project for this year and next year. We did issue an RFP earlier this year for architectural and engineering services for a firm to prepare plans for the completion of the interior of the building. We did receive quite a few responses. Those were reviewed internally, and we are prepared when the board is ready to make a recommendation on an architect who would prepare those plans and specifications. We also received a draft license agreement from the group that's here with us today, along with a site plan and a floor plan. So I circulated those again to you yesterday, so you would have them in front of you. I think when we discussed the potential hiring of the architects to do the interior plans, the board wanted to have the group come in and talk about fundraising and financial capabilities and the plans that the group has for potentially taking over the stewardship of the building. So that's really the purpose of the meeting today. The agreement has been reviewed by the town attorney's office and also by my office. We have some, I'd say minor legal issues and then some other, I guess, more policy issues about how the building is going to be used and also how the parking lot and other areas at the marina would be used together with parks and recreation. So that's where we are today. And I want to thank the North Sea Maritime Group for all their hard work up to date in putting together a concept for taking over the stewardship of the building when it's completed. So maybe, Jay, I'll leave it up to you who you'd like to maybe review what the group has in mind.
The Maritime Center folks. Ann, do you want to start this? Or Mark? Whoever does has to unmute because we
You're
won't be able
muted.
to hear you till
And
you
you're
do.
muted.
Okay. Now do you hear me?
Yes?
Now we can see you, but we can hear you.
You can hear me twice?
We can
Well,
hear
the
you
problem
once.
is you have two devices in
Good
one
job.
room.
Oh, so we have to get rid of one device or close
Yeah.
down, use one device at a time.
Well, you have both of them in the same room, so that's the problem.
So you can only use one.
You can only use one. Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're good now.
Okay, we'll just hand the phone around, the camera around. and
That
we,
works.
So I wanted to once again thank you all for, especially Lisa, for making it possible for us to talk to you about our stewardship agreement and our vision for what we see for the Tupper Boathouse. We took Lisa's questions very seriously, divvied them up into categories, and we'll address them, as we go through this. The North Sea, our Maritime Center has been incorporated since December of 2016. We have a really unusually solid board that are either close neighbors of the Tupper Boathouse or have strong ties to North Sea, or both. 4 of us were involved with the original town advisory committee set up by Bridget Fleming in 2014. So we've been at this for a while. And that led 3 years later to the formation of the North Sea Maritime Center, 501c3. I'd like to just briefly say who our directors are and what they bring to the table, because it's really an impressive board. And so alphabetically, we have Ted Anderson. Is Ted on? He could wave so you could see what he looks like. But Ted Anderson is an attorney practicing in New York and Texas. In Texas, he is managing partner of a business trial law firm in Dallas. He has very close ties to North Sea, as his mother's family is from North Sea. His great-grandfather, Carroll Martin, in fact, was one of the founders of the North Sea Fire Department. His uncle Art, father Ted, brother Tom are proprietors of the Ted's East End Deli on Hampton Road, which we all know very well, I'm sure. Ted served for 10 years as Director of Development for SUNY Albany Foundation and for other large nonprofit groups. And he has agreed to be our Development Director for the North Sea Maritime Center. Mark Antoletti, Mark Antoletti is a third-generation resident of Southampton. He and his wife have raised 3 children in Southampton. He owns and operates a local landscape company started by his grandfather 85 years ago, continued by his father himself, and now his son for the 4th generation in that company. He's been involved in many community projects over the years. Especially notable for us is his work as the founder and longtime president of the SYS, the Southampton Youth Services Recreation Center. Lynn Ash, our secretary, and her family have lived in the same land in North Sea, located right across down the road from the Boathouse, since she and her grandparents arrived here from Queens in 1942. Lynn and Jim raised 2 children in the public schools. Especially notable factoid is that Ann Tupper, Ned Tupper's daughter, who was living in the Boathouse at the time, was Lynn's best friend. Lynn has been a social work director, a teacher, and a librarian, and for over 25 years, she was director of the Rogers Memorial Library. She's on the board of the NSMC and serves as secretary. And Connie Clayman's family started vacationing in Southampton over 70 years ago and bought property in North Sea 50 years ago. Upon retirement, Connie relocated to Southampton permanently. Previously, she had been one of the founding staff for the Liberty Science Center, a hands-on children's museum in Jersey City, where she was CFO for 25 years. She also has served as CFO of Carnegie Hall and of Bronx Works, the social service organization in the South Bronx. Currently, she's also on the board of the Conscience Point Oyster Hatchery, as well as the NSMC board, where she serves as treasurer. Sheila Comparetto bought an 1896 farmhouse in North Sea, just down the road from the Tupper Boathouse, and became a member of the Southampton Town Landmarks and Historic Board. She's worked on many history-related projects. One of her first projects was to work to help the North Sea Schoolhouse be landmarked. She's the recording secretary of the North Sea Community Association. And she became part of the Tupper Boathouse Advisory Group and then initial director of the North Sea Maritime Center, with special interest in historic preservation and wooden boat building. Mark Matthews is a prolific architect with lots of commissions locally in New York City and the Caribbean. He's lived on the East End for 50 years. He and his wife, Joan Hatfield, live on Shore Road directly across Alewife Creek from the Tupper Boathouse and have raised 5 children who benefited from Southampton schools. Mark had many youthful experiences exploring canals, small boat building, sailing the Hudson, fishing and clamming, and long distance offshore sailing, which led to his passion in using our waters to stimulate minds and enrich the human condition. He served several roles at the Breakwater Yacht Club, including Commodore and Director of Youth Sailing. has been president of the Conscience Point Shellfish Hatchery in 2014, and is currently, as of a week ago, the president of the North Sea Maritime Center, coming into a very important time. And finally, Anne, I actually am last in the order alphabetically. My husband and I, Howard, have lived in North Sea for 50 plus years, raised 3 children who attended the public schools. We live next door to the Conscience Point historic site in the Tupper Boathouse. And by next door, I mean next door, so we're very familiar with them. I had a 35-year career at B&L, where I was an environmental scientist working on integrated energy, environmental and economic modeling, energy policy analysis, nuclear non-proliferation, et cetera, et cetera. I also worked with the town and many local organizations during these years to make, with a special interest in making North Sea and the Conscience Point area welcoming to residents and visitors. So I worked in the North Sea CAC, Town Waterfront Protection Plan. I was a director of the Southampton History Museum, Town Sustainability, et cetera. I was president of the North Sea Maritime Center for 5 years. Currently, as of a week ago, I am the vice president of that organization. So that took a little while, but I think it's important for you to see that we have board members who are really very accomplished and have the skills needed to make a good project out of the Tupper Boathouse. We divvied up, as I said, we took Lisa's questions, numbered them 1 to 9, and divvied them up into categories. And so I will take category 1, which is looking at the historic purpose. Why was the Tupper Boathouse saved, basically, and how the historic purpose leads to our mission. Then Mark Analetti actually will follow me, and he'll talk about our vision, what it looks like, how we can hope to achieve it, and really the interaction of programs and budget. And Mark will talk about some of these requests we had that Lisa mentioned, of that we have to use the grounds outside the building, because the only thing given to us in that historic designation was the building itself. So we need some supporting areas. And Ted Anderson then will discuss some of the specific questions that have arisen about the stewardship agreement itself. And then it's off. We're here to answer any questions you have. We would hope that we've answered most of them and what we'll provide, but if not, please ask more. And it would be a great goal if at the end of the day, we resolved the things that you're concerned about resolving. And if not, we have a short list of questions and things that we can do to resolve them. So,
Mark, no, you're here. You're
Yeah.
right here on that paragraph.
yeah, I know.
Okay.
Lynn keeps me straight. So what I want to do is start out by talking about the historic purpose. And that is because the historic purpose, why people think this building was preserved, really permeates all our discussions on programs and budgets. We need to be on the same page as far as historic purpose goes. I've been told through these years to go back and look at the original documents, the purchase resolution for the Tupper Boathouse and the historic designation resolution, and see what they say. That's what we should be doing. So we did that. And in summary, the Tupper Boathouse is located on the present town Conscience Point Marina property, which was known in the early history of North Sea as the boat lot. The Tuppers purchased that property in 1928, built the Tupper Boathouse in 1932, operated a boat building and repair business until they sold the property in 1959 to the first in a string of nightclub dining establishments. The nightclubs became trendy and well-known to both national and international customers. In 2003, the town purchased the Conscience Point Marina property, which included the Tupper Boathouse as, and I quote, CPF target open space park acquisition. That's CPF target open space park acquisition, resolution 2003-116. There is no mention of the Tupper Boathouse or historic purpose in that resolution. And in fact, the Tupper Boathouse was scheduled for some time after the property was purchased to be torn down. It was rescued from demolition by being designated a town landmark in 2015, resolution 2015-459. The historic designation application was submitted by the Landmarks and Historic Districts Committee using detailed research documents written by Ed Wisnowski on the Tupper Boathouse and its role in North Sea and Southampton. Those documents, which form the basis for its historic designation, discuss the relationship of the Tupper Boathouse, North Sea Harbor, and Conscience Point. They describe the maritime center, maritime character of the area, the arrival of the Tupper family, boat building business, and the Tupper family central role in the new North Sea community activities, including the formation of the North Sea Fire Department at the Tupper Boathouse and hosting community and recreational maritime events. They even describe in some length the nightclub years. Those were apparently famous. We were internationally known at that point through the nightclubs. These reports clearly reflect that the entirety of the rich history of Tupper Boathouse in this very historic maritime location is what makes it historic. In fact, to quote the landmarks for it, it said the desired outcome is preservation because of the building's significance to the North Sea community and the town of Southampton. And went on to say should allow and encourage adaptive reuse of the boathouse by the town or a partner steward. So what did we learn? It was purchased as a CPF open space park acquisition. The designation, historic designation, is very broad. There's no specific mention of wooden boat building in that resolution. So as far as we could find, there's no evidence in the town files that the Tupper Boathouse property was initially purchased or later preserved as historic preservation of a wooden boat building business. The historic purpose is in fact much broader, which we should all be very happy about because this gives us leeway to develop more innovative programs that could actually pay for themselves with so in your box, I think you should have, there's a one-pager that we sent out where we wrote the historic purpose of the Tupper Boathouse, which we took from our looking in the records. And the historic purpose is to honor the long history and maritime character of North Sea Harbor with specific attention to the role of the Tupper boat building business and family in the life of the North Sea community. That's as close as we could get from these documents. And the North Sea Maritime Center mission then, which we took from them, is to provide interpretive, educational, recreational programs to increase the awareness and relevance of historical and contemporary maritime activities, the Tupper family, and the history of North Sea Harbor. You know, it really is the historical building in this area, anywhere near where the first settlers first came. And it's important, not only to North Sea, but to Southampton town. So our mission supports this historic purpose. And in the past 5 years, we've developed the mission and vision and discussed programming with town officials. We've looked to define programs that fulfill this mission while also sustaining the ongoing operation of the North Sea Maritime Center. So this is a little different. Its historic purpose is really essential to the discussion that will be coming up later. And in fact, coming now with Mark Antoletti, who will talk about our vision, how we want to carry out this mission and historic purpose.
On there? Yeah. Get up. All set? Okay. Good morning, everybody. I usually don't like to read prepared notes, but I really wanted to be clear with our message on, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions and stuff later on, so just bear with me with this whole world of Zoom we're now living in. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak about this exciting project during this very busy time for you all. Good luck to you all on Tuesday. I know it's an anxious time. My role today is to help paint the vision we have developed and to lay out some of the opportunities that we see this priceless location can offer to our community. But before I do that, however, I'd like to take a moment to share what brought me to this wonderful project. I was invited to an informal reception graciously hosted by Mark Matthews and his wife, Joan, almost 4 years ago. That was held to gather community support for this amazing project. I listened for the first time, like some of you probably today, to what the Tupper Boathouse could be. I don't own a boat. I rarely go to the beach, but I was hooked. My love of our community's history, its physical beauty, and my perpetual pursuit to help make our community a better place to live convinced me to join this effort. I felt my experience in helping to create, develop, and manage Southampton Youth Services from its inception to the thriving community asset it has become would be a welcome addition to this effort. Fortunate to be part of one amazing team of doers, I saw right away that the North Sea Maritime Center Board had the same dedication and courage the founding SYS Board had to see such a difficult and time-consuming project through. I immediately felt the same excitement about this project that I felt when we were dreaming of SYS on cocktail napkins. We certainly hope you share in our excitement. Building public-private partnerships almost never come with a blueprint. It takes hard work, of course, but the most important ingredient required by both sides for the success of such a project is trust. Many years of work have gone into the presentation we offer you today, and we are confident we are on the right path. We hope you agree after today. To preserve such a historic building, as well as the others you have committed to throughout the town of Southampton, is a testament to your vision as leaders. As the beneficiaries of such a vision, we certainly thank you for that. The responsibility we have undertaken as potential stewards of such an effort guides us daily. No house becomes a home until it is awash in positive activity. The Tupper Boathouse is no different. It is why we, as hopefully future stewards, believe it is the programming and the people running those programs that will determine its ultimate value to our community. Please allow me a few minutes to share our vision of such activity. It is our belief that the Tupper Boathouse programming must do the following three things. 1, reflect the history of the property. 2, offer recreational and educational activities conducive to its location. And 3, provide revenues that will help to ultimately allow some level of self-sustainability. So here are some of the offerings we hope to provide someday. Educational programming that could be in the form of speakers, interactive classes, film showings or exhibits. The topics could include local maritime history, environmental issues, boating safety, shellfish cultivation, seaside flora and fauna identification, or even maritime art classes. We see a wooden boat building program designed to recreate the historical use of the building while teaching young and old alike the thrill of creating something with your own hands. We would like to offer watercraft activities through kayak and sailboat rentals, as well as sunset cruise opportunities for those not fortunate enough to have their own boat. We believe youth activities are vital and should be the backbone of our offerings. A sailing school, summer explorer camps, and oyster hatchery experiences are just some of the programs that could be wonderful hubs of activity there. We believe that due to its incredible location, it will be of great value for limited events. In winter, intimate event space could be offered to individuals and organizations looking for something special. The museum piece could provide a wonderful setting while promoting the historical value. In warmer months, a maritime-related craft fair could invite people to discover the area as a terrific destination for the family. Limited reception events could also be offered as well. The location has great value and would be a vital source of needed revenue. Finally, the unknown. When the dream of SYS began to take shape, none of us ever dreamed of what would find us. I see the same here. Offer this incredibly resourced community such a spot, and you never know who or what will come knocking. So in closing, I'd just like to make a couple of remarks. There will be no doubt concerns on your part regarding some of these uses, but please remember that most of this board lives intimately close to this facility. Increased traffic, parking, and noise are our constant concern. Their selfless efforts to invite activity to this amazing location they know is home have never been lost on me. I hope it is not on you. We certainly want to be good neighbors. We also have worked very diligently on forecasting our operating budget. Even in limited use, this building will require significant monies to keep the doors open. Having said that, we believe the ultimate goal is to be as self-sufficient as possible. Although we will have limited revenue producing opportunities, the development of those opportunities will be critical for our survival. As programming is being developed, we hope continued financial support from the town regarding operations will be available to us as well. While fundraising and grant outreach will continue, asking a small group to continuously fundraise to keep the lights on is not sustainable. Thank you for the opportunity to offer our vision of the Tupper Boathouse to you. Your support, guidance, and trust will be paramount in determining the outcome of the story we are working so hard to write. So thank you very much. I'm sure there's going to be Q&A going on, but I think we want to keep this presentation moving. And I know Mark Matthews has some comments about the building itself.
Good morning. It's good to have us all together. Finally, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity. To be brief, we've worked for several years to help restore life and relevancy to the once vibrant Tupper Boathouse. The programs we are developing will renew an awareness of the history of North Sea Harbor and stimulate future appreciation of our beautiful harbor. The Tupper Boathouse is a perfect building for us to use to fulfill our mission. The design for the renovation of the building has been created to facilitate the planned programs and activities as follows. We expect to equip a small boat building shop within the two-story center of the building, which is where it was the boats were built in the past. As the boat building continues, we need additional storage for finished boats and materials. The proposed boat storage to the north, also accessible from the boat launch parking lot, will provide that necessary storage area. We will also create a youth sailing program modeled after the very successful Breakwater Yacht Club program. That program has provided meaningful on-the-water learning experiences for thousands of East End children over the past 25 years. The boat slips requested will allow water access for the sailing program, as well as harbor and bay cruises on a vessel yet to be donated. Occasionally, we plan to host fundraising events under tents set up where indicated on the site plan. These events will draw residents to the North Sea Maritime Center grounds overlooking our harbor. Parking is a concern. Our site plan prepared by Areas Design has added some additional parking spaces. When the new alternative septic system is installed, I expect we'll find several additional spaces. For your information, 3 of the North Sea Maritime Center board members live in the immediate vicinity of the Tupper Boathouse and state from personal observation that the marina parking lots have never been full. In any event, June through September are preferred boating months, and the parking is clearly not an issue the other 8 months. Within the building on the north end, the Southampton History Museum will house exhibits and events designed to bring the North Sea area's history and future into focus. The first floor of the north end of the restored Tupper Boathouse will contain a meeting room for lectures, screens, and gatherings. There will also be offices as well as classrooms for shellfish, finch fish, and water quality education, seamanship, navigation classes, as well as paddleboard and kayak excursions. So we have focused on how the building will be used. The RFP that went out acknowledges all these uses, and we look forward to working with the architect and engineer to answer any questions that they may have as they get on with their work. And we'll be happy to answer questions later on. In the meantime, Ted Anderson will address some of the stewardship issues that were raised by Lisa. So Ted, you're on.
Where is Ted?
I'm here. Hi, I'm Ted Anderson. Really pleased for the opportunity to appear before you folks today. It's been a real fun project. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to be a director on the board. Thank you all for your attention here today. We have received some questions with regard to the stewardship agreement that we have provided to you. And I was just going to address some of those questions. And if there's others on top of that, we're happy to talk about that as well. The document itself that we have submitted to you is a stewardship agreement as opposed to a lease for the building. And so it is modeled, and I was the principal drafter of the stewardship agreement. I used stewardship agreements for the 2007 management and stewardship agreement between Bridgehampton Historical Society and the town of Southampton for the stewardship and management of the Nathaniel Rogers House. I used the sale and leaseback agreement between the Bridgehampton Community House Association and the Bridgehampton Park District. And I used the 2007 management and stewardship agreement between Hampton Bays Historical Society and the town of Southampton for stewardship and management of Canoe Place Chapel. And so those are documents that I know have been used by the town of Southampton in the past. And we used those as we crafted the stewardship agreement that we put forward before you today. One of the questions that we were asked is why are we asking for a 25-year lease or why are we asking for a 25-year term? The question to us is whether we are asking for a lease. We're not really asking for a lease. We're asking for a term because the stewardship agreement addresses not just the building, but other property around it. And hopefully you have, and you can see there's an exhibit to the stewardship agreement that is a site plan that identifies various areas on the location that we would look to have the opportunity to use and utilize and manage for the town of Southampton as part of our stewardship agreement. And so because it's not really a lease, but rather a stewardship agreement like the other examples I gave to you, the term that we have set forth is 25 years. And indeed, 25 years is the same term that we had for the Rogers House, the same term that you have for the sale leaseback agreement with the Bridgehampton Community House Association. And it's 25 years also for the term for the management and stewardship agreement for the Hampton Bays Historical Society for management of the Canoe Place Chapel. And so that's where we got the 25 years. And as that, yes, sir. Okay. And the reason why 25 years is important to us is, and it's in many extent, it's my responsibility as the chair of our development, is it's important for us to be able to go out into the community, both the summer community and the year-round community there, to raise funds for this project. And I'm happy to announce we've had a significant progress in that on that front. We've raised funds over $30,000 already in the last couple of years in support of the organization. And if we have a stewardship agreement that gives us the rights that are set forth in the stewardship agreement, we'll have some naming opportunities for the building and for the paved stones around it. And we think that that would be crucial for us to be able to demonstrate to potential donors of substantially more than the amount that we've already raised to support the project that we have under the circumstances. And at this point, I think we're contemplating a $300,000 range, which I think is possible so long as we have the authority granted from the stewardship agreement to offer people the opportunity to do some naming rights in the building. The other question that we were asked is how there is a stipend that is set forth in the stewardship agreement and in the budget. We've worked very hard on coming up with a budget for the project, and the budget contains $150,000 stipend. And the way that we got to the stipend is actually very simple. We just used the projected expenses for operating the facility compared to the projected revenues for the facility, and the difference is $150,000. So if you look at the budget that we submitted to you, you'll see that our expenses that we projected were $293,470, and that the revenues that we project for recreation, fundraising, grants, and receptions is $143,470. And so the difference between the two is $150,000 stipend. And we think that's a real number. The budget that we have submitted to you was reviewed by the respected local accounting firm. Mark Analiti is the kind of architect of the budget. He used his vast experience at SYS in order to create it. And so, we want to jump into this project with our eyes wide open, and we want to be realistic about the situation that we're in. There is a typo in the stewardship agreement. The stewardship agreement itself, as opposed to the budget, has the stipend listed as $50,000. It should be $150,000. So we'll make that amendment to it, and I'm sure there'll be other amendments as well as we kind of move forward in this process. But those were the questions that I was tasked with responding to. And with all that being said, we're happy to entertain any other questions that you folks may have.
Thank you for clearing up that about the stipend. That was one of my questions. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Ann and Mark, I just have to say, we've been doing this for years now, and this is exactly what we were looking for. So, I have some real basic questions about on your expense. These seem to be actually lower numbers than I might expect, but that's all to be worked out. I just want to commend you for this. This is exactly what we wanted to see, and or at least I wanted to see, and I'm really, really pleased with this. Specific questions, I'm still, as we got this yesterday, I'm still making my notes, but I think in general, it's a good document. So I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you guys for all the work that you've done. And hopefully we can get this finally over the threshold. So I appreciate your work.
I have a few questions, if you guys can hear me okay. First of all, thank you for that great presentation and for your dedication and for developing such a well-thought plan for this historic building. It's exciting. The future, I think, is very exciting, and I think we'll get there. But I just want to make sure, all the basics have been covered. I mean, the town has made a substantial investment into acquiring the land and to elevating the building, and will make a significant investment in terms of the renovation, both on the exterior and the interior. And I'm actually not upset with the idea that there might be activity there. That I think that is good. And my broader concern that you guys, since you all lived in close proximity to the building, would try to keep it as quiet as possible. So the fact that you are inviting the public to utilize this facility is music to my ears. I think that's great. So I don't know the historic layout, so I want to start sort of with the layout first and the uses. And, you know, I love the idea of boat building since that's what the historic use is. I want to make sure you have adequate floor area for building boats. From the historic photographs, it looks like the boats were relatively small boats, not tiny boats, but so maybe that that section with the cathedral ceiling is enough to handle that. So let me start with that. Is there adequate floor area to do some boat work restoration? And I will say I'm familiar with the East Hampton historic boat building operation. I was part of launching that, and it's been quite successful. So to replicate that model seems like a positive thing for Southampton. But if somebody wants to address whether the original floor plan had more room for boat building, or is that about the right space?
I'll take that one. Mark Matthews here. There were, based on the photographs that I've seen of that building when they were building boats, they would build possibly three boats at the same time, and they would be the size would be 22, 23, 24 feet. They would basically be power boats. Our goal is not to build 23, 24, 25 foot boats. Our goal is to build smaller boats that people can get in and build in a couple of months, so that that process starts and finishes. Our goal is also to build small sailing boats, which would ultimately be used for the youth sailing program. And it would be the North Sea 14 or something like that. We'll get a boat designed to build. And so the size of the space there is about 48 by 30 is the basic size of the space that would be for boat building. And to build 3 or 4 boats at the same time of that size, there's plenty of space for the materials, for the boats themselves, for the frames, and for that's taking advantage of the vertical space above it. So when boats are partially built, they could be hauled up higher to be out of the way so we can work on the other boats that are down on the ground. Additionally, yes.
No, go ahead. Do your additionally.
So additionally, the building is laid out so that 2-story space you can look down on from the walkway connecting the upstairs, which will allow people to really see what's going on without being in there with the sawdust. So
Mark, that's Exhibit D that you're talking about. So the area for the boat building is visible up to the 2nd floor from both ground floor and 2nd floor along the mezzanine, right?
That's exactly right. The mezzanine would be shut off from the boat building, just be glass in there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make a point because you reminded me of something, and I had just gotten from the boat building school up in Maine, which I happened to have the opportunity to visit. You actually have more space than their operation for small boat building. So I appreciate what you're proposing here. Although the numbers are a little hard to read, at least for me and my glasses, but it actually exceeds what I'm seeing here on this from Maine.
So I want to stay, Mark, on the subject of layout with another question, then I want to switch over to budgeting. So in terms of layout, was this initially a 2-story building, or was it one giant floor that, you know, had high ceiling heights?
There was, I may ask Lynn to opine on that because she was there when it was a boat building facility. But the center the core of the building where we anticipate having our boat building facility was 2-story. On the, just so everybody knows, on the south end of the building, which has now been demolished but will be replaced, that was a residence for the Tupper family. So this was a commercial facility for boat building, but it's also a home. And the 2-story building on the south end was the residence.
So that's one of the places I'm going here. So, you know, I noticed in the design, you're including a residence. I didn't hear you speak of it in the presentation, but it looks like there's an apartment for somebody in the design. Can you?
Yes, I'd be glad to. Our thinking was that first off, there was a residence. And so that's historically, that's a valid thing to continue. But additionally, our thought was that the executive director of this facility, as part of his compensation, there could be a housing component to it, because that would allow us to hire someone without having to pay him so much because you have a place to live, or she.
Well, you know, you do have an $80,000 budget for compensating the executive director already. So you're
Yes.
looking at 80,000 plus housing. That's a pretty good deal.
We do want to have we want to make it a good deal. We want it to be someone who wants to be there, who's going to be very devoted to it, and we want to pay all of our people properly and pay them well, so they want to do a good job.
So, you know, which gets into the whole like next category that I wanted to cover, because, you know, the interior is going to cost a lot of money, you know, a lot of money to build. You've got glass walls, you've got an elevator there for ADA, you got this apartment. We've been using Community Preservation Fund money to do this. We're fortunate to have that the tax revenues, they're healthy and strong, but they're also quite limited as to how we can use them. And next year we're going into an extensive audit by Tom DiNapoli, the state controller of this program. You know, other towns have gotten into all kinds of trouble in terms of inappropriate use and having to return money to the CPF fund. So I don't know that you can build an elevator. I don't know that you can build an apartment. These are questions I'm going to have to turn to Lisa for. We don't have another source of funding to do this. And then obviously, if we did use general taxpayer money, these things are revenue generating, we'd obviously want to use the revenue to pay off the debt service on those types of things. So it gets a little bit complicated. They're all noble uses. They sound great, but these funds are highly restrictive. So you know, often when I have questions like this, I turn to Assemblyman Fred Thiel and say, can we do this? I know we can't use it for maintaining the building once it's restored. And that is problematic in and of itself, because it's so expensive to continue to maintain and heat and operate these buildings. But let me see if Lisa is prepared to answer any of those questions about construction of the interior. And it has come up with the Tiana Life Saving Station as well, in terms of what we can pay for, what we can't pay for with CPF. So we have a little bit of experience here. Lisa, can you opine on this issue?
Does she know?
Lisa, you're muted.
Sorry. What we typically do is in putting together a budget for a restoration like this, our consultant and architects break down the various components, for example, an elevator or the accessory apartment. And then we go through the CPF regulations and determine whether CPF can fund those in full or a certain percentage of those expenses. So that has not been done yet for this project because we haven't costed it out. But that is something that we will have to do to make sure that you know, we have a clear demarcation as to what monies come out of CPF and what monies have to come from private funds. We did that with the Nathaniel Rogers House also, because there were things that were not covered by CPF as part of that project.
All right, so that's a really a necessary step, because as wonderful as these ideas are, you know, there might be, I'll just make up a number, $1 million worth of renovation that can't be covered by CPF, and will have to be raised privately, or the town would have to do a bond. That would be something, a conversation would have to happen with the town. But we haven't really been, at least I have not been involved in the planning of the interior. So probably the more historically accurate the interior is to what was there, probably the more it can be paid for by CPF. But the apartment does concern me a little bit in terms of that. And then in terms of being a town facility and whether there's any regulations in terms of how much somebody can be paid to be the executive director or something, I don't know about that, but typically the work that gets done will have to comply with the same rules that the town complies with in terms of prevailing wage and bonding and competitive bidding. Like there's a whole bunch of regulations, which sometimes lead to higher costs. So we'll have to be mindful of that too. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
All these things that you're discussing and Lisa discussed, none of these are surprises to us. In fact, 3 years ago, we got a budget for the construction put together, and we went through with Lisa and her agents what portions of each of the components could be funded by CPF money and where there were shortfalls. Now, make no mistake, the bottom line on that budget, which is 3 years old, which obviously is not appropriate now, but the bottom line was that the shortfall, we knew that we were going to have to, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to find a way to cover the shortfall. Furthermore, we have to find a way to fund ourselves so that we have enough money to run this from the beginning. So now that circles back to why it's so important to have the stewardship agreement. We feel that we cannot, without a stewardship agreement, have any serious fundraising, because we don't have any guarantee that this building will be available to us. So that's why we're trying to move this ahead. But all the things you've mentioned, we know we have to deal with, and we'll deal with them head on each time.
Well, no, it's important, you know, that I bring them up, you know, at this juncture. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. This is just, you know, we have to do everything by the book. It just is what it is. And I'm glad, I know, Mark, you have the experience, you're familiar with the regulations, so it shouldn't be any surprise. You also are requesting $150,000 a year stipend. That can't be done through CPF. That would have to be done through either a parks district, which I'm not even sure whether this area is part of a parks district. If not,
it's not at this point.
All right, so either it could be created, which is a lot of work, or it could be, you know, funded town-wide. I know we do give money to SYS, we give money to the animal shelter, we're likely will give money to the aquatic center. This would, you know, in Watermill, the Parks District gives money to various things, including the museums and the maintenance of properties in Watermill through the Parks District. And in Bridgehampton as well, there's funding through the Parks District for the community center. So I don't, know exactly where that 150 would come from. That would be a board decision, but there would likely be, there will be some tax impacts to doing that. So, it's something the board would have to decide going into this, knowing that the programs are not likely to fully, pay for the operational expenses, and that there'll be some subsidy required. So I'm glad you brought that up, but we'll have to figure out how we have to comply with the tax cap and everything else, and that's a financial decision the board would have to make. But at least I'm just becoming aware of that. Before today, I wasn't aware that you were asking $150,000 a year. I just got done with preparing the budget for next year. So I know how tight things are, and how, certain expenses in certain areas are going up with our population increasing. We're all doing our best to keep property taxes from going up. So, but that's something we'll have to look at. So, but I do think we need this analysis because of what CPF can pay for and what CPF can't. Because stewardship agreement aside, if you have to raise another $1 million in capital to build this, I don't know if that's something that you'll be able to do. That's a lot of money. Maybe it's possible. And if not, the town would have to look at that too. And I think it's important that the town weigh in on the interior design, with the understanding that CPF can pay for some things, but not others. So with that, I don't really have any other questions. So let me go back to the town board.
Well, just one point I want to make. We've had these discussions over many, many years now. It seems like more than many years, but we've had these discussions. And so I do want to say that this group is well aware of those issues. And this is sort of a status, but the real goal here is that in order to accomplish some of the fundraising that they need to do, they feel, and I tend to agree, that they need to have a stewardship agreement in hand to give them credibility with those groups that they would go to raise this kind of money. And secondarily, we've had some very informal conversations on a similar subject with Assemblyman Thiel relative to the maintenance of properties that we have in the town CPF portfolio and the ability for us to even maintain those. And I think he didn't slam the door to that. So I think that's something that I know, Lisa, you've talked with Fred on that. And I've had a few conversations on that same basis, that our inventory is so big that we need to be able to make that adjustment. It's either an increase in the CPF percentage of CPF, particularly on the water quality side, which may have an impact on that, but needs to be conducive or interested in doing that kind of conversation. So that's something to factor in. I mean, not to factor in, but to keep in your head that this is also a possibility in that, and to explore the ability. One of the things that at the very outset that we were pretty adamant about was that the group that stewards this property, and we've had, sorry. We've had a lot of discussions. We've had some stewardship organizations that have worked well and others that haven't. So, I share your concern, Supervisor, that, you want to have a group that's going to be thorough and have the wherewithal to do this. I think this group is.
Yeah, that's not, John, that wasn't my concern. I know the people involved in this group. I have no doubt of their abilities and their credentials. I think it's wonderful to have a group like this involved. I just, and it would be great if the CPF were modified to allow some of the money to be used for the maintenance of historic buildings. That would change the equation. I'm dealing with the practical realities of what the law is currently. I want to make sure we go in with eyes wide open here, because, all these ideas sound wonderful. I just, some of them may not be fundable with CPF. And I want to make sure that as we develop these plans, and forgive me, but I'm hearing for the first time about the floor plans. I'm hearing for the first time about the budget. You may have been involved for years with this, but for me, it's brand new. So, I just want to make sure that, we're able to realize, some of these ideas within the financial realities. So
And I agree with you on that. And I believe that, eyes are wide open here. There's a lot of give and take to go forward with this as we get into it a little bit more deeply. But, that is the basis of the original conversations that we had, is a certain sense of reality of what we could and could not do under CPF, which is a common problem that we come across, or maybe not a problem, but relative to what CPF allows and what it doesn't. And
I think the floor plans may end up getting modified based on what CPF can pay for. And
it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
so it may end up not including an apartment, and that may end up meaning you have to pay the director more or whatever. I think things may get adjusted based on that information. So I think it's critical that Lisa takes the ideas that have been brought forward in the floor plan and does this analysis, and then meets with the group and says, here is what can be paid for, here is what can't, here's the differential. Is this reasonable that you could raise this level of funding? Maybe comes back to the town board and says the town board want to do a capital project to cover these things or part of these things. And then we take it from there. And if we have to make adjustments to the floor plan accordingly, we would at that point. Does that make sense?
Mark, you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to, just to circle back. 3 years ago, we did exactly this. Figured out what CPF, Lisa and associates figured out what Mary figured out what CPF could do. And we realized what the shortfall was. And we have to say, we decided we could fill the shortfall. I expect to have the same conversation again when the drawings get done and the bids come back. But I don't think there'll be any difference in it. I don't think we should be talking about changing floor plans. We should be talking about trying to accomplish the goals that we've laid out that have been agreed to by many people on the town board, including John and Julie, et cetera. So we don't have the numbers because we can't have the numbers yet. The drawings have to be done to get the numbers. So
I don't know if I agree with, I don't know, Mark. I mean, maybe you had these floor plans 3 years ago and you discussed them with Mary and she said everything's okay, but I've never seen a residential apartment in a CPF building. That is completely new to me, and I don't know that that's allowed, but I will let Lisa weigh in on that. I mean, I appreciate it, makes sense, but I personally, I don't think you can do it. I don't think even not only can't CPF pay for that, but I don't think you can even do it.
If it's part of its history. I thought something is sticking in the back of my mind that the Rogers Mansion in Bridgehampton actually has some living space in it. And
Nope.
that was, no,
Nope.
I had to go back and look.
I've been there many times. The whole thing was a residence, but it's no longer a residence. Now it's a museum.
Well, I mean, if a residence, like in this case, the resident is historically accurate, in fact, it's part of the history of the Tupper Boathouse, wouldn't it make sense to have a residence again? I mean,
And it's not about what makes sense. It's about what's in the CPF law.
all right, so Mark and I did go, Mark and I did talk to, okay, go ahead, and then I'll.
No, I'll leave that for Fred to advise us. If it's allowable, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Well, Mark and I did go talk to Fred about this kind of a thing, how we could know things we could do in the Tupper Boathouse and so forth. And he said, he sent an email, in fact, later, and said the matter of aligning the historic purpose of the Tupper Boathouse with the statutes and policies of Southampton Town and the Community Preservation Fund falls under the jurisdiction of the town. In other words, don't come back and talk to me about it. Talk to the town about how we can make this work together.
Well, I trust.
And this business of the historic purpose then is why that's so important. And in fact, we
I
did
love the
write a
idea.
letter to Mary Wilson on that, huh?
No, I love
We
the
wrote
idea.
a letter to Mary Wilson on the historic purpose. It's in your file. It's huge with many attachments. I'd be glad to send it again.
I appreciate
But
that.
it essentially, I think from what you just said, I think there is some leeway that's possible here
Again, I'm not going to make,
based on, yeah.
I'm not going to interpret the
Go ahead.
law. I'm going to allow Fred to let me know. I trust him implicitly. If he says it's allowable, I believe it's allowable. Sometimes we take things to the opinions committee, but I've never heard of it before. I hope you can do it, and I hope it is allowable. But
You have to consider the parkland alienation issues as well. And this is, this property was purchased with CPF monies, which is park, and we have to look into that, whether a use as a private apartment would be an alienation. It may not be. We may be able to fit it in if the person living there is helping towards monitoring the park and facilitating the use of the facility. That may be something we can consider, but on first blush, a private apartment maybe we'd have to look to see whether it would cause an alienation of the parkland.
Yeah, well, that certainly would make sense to have whatever director is there help out with some of the park issues where we're embedded. I mean, that could be part of what they provide to the town.
it could keep the compensation down. It could help provide affordable housing for, it's all, if you have to bring in a director, good luck finding a place to live. It's very expensive out here. So I think it's a positive thing. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. It's my job to just make sure everything is by the book. I can't have a situation where somebody's, the state is trying to claw back money, making us reimburse the CPF fund or whatever it might be. Or I just want to make sure whatever we do is, fully compliant with the law, which sometimes makes me look like the bad guy. I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. I'm just, I have 27 years of governmental experience. It's not my first rodeo. I just want to make sure, it actually might be 29 years. I just want to make sure that we are, doing things by the book. That's all.
Yeah, well, so are we.
May
I speak? On page 10 of the CPF acquisitions adopted by the town board January 25th, 2011, I think the key word is, I'll read it. A historical property acquired with CPF cannot be used to house unrelated staff. In this case, it would be related staff. It's part of the museum. It's part of the Tupper Boathouse as an original residence. And I think that's on page 10. And also another question came up with elevator, and the CPF does cover ADA compliant changes. So that was just one component that was brought up with the elevator.
What are you reading from, Sheila?
I'm reading from Rules and Regulations for CPF Acquisition Stewardship adopted by the town board of the town of Southampton on January 25th, 2011. So I think the fact that it's related staff, they give it as an example, page 10.
Okay. We'll look at that.
Lisa's been trying to answer the original question.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to circle back on the allocation of CPF versus non-CPF expenses. Our consultant from McLean, Matt Jedica, did send me while we were meeting. We did an allocation, budget allocation. It's a year old now, but we have already started, or updated the 3-year-old allocation that Mark had mentioned before. So that would definitely need to be updated. When the last allocation we did, the non-CPF funding was at about $666,000, and the balance was CPF monies, according to our rules and regulations as to what we can pay for from CPF funds and what percentage of other expenses we can pay. But I think these and the other questions are things that, we'll have to look at and nail down before, we finalize the stewardship agreement.
Agreed.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of things.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody in North Sea for all that you have done. Your dedication, your volunteerism, your work time on this is notable. And I certainly applaud the goals to this. Also, I want to thank Julie and John for their work on this as well. I think, we are moving in the right direction. The ideas are clever. I think having an apartment for an executive director of sorts is appropriate. But I agree with the supervisor. We need to be sure about this, and we will get there, if we can or we cannot. I certainly wouldn't want Comptroller DiNapoli to come back at us and say, what, you can't do this. And like the supervisor said, having us to claw back large amounts of money, we really need to do diligence on that. So we will do this. I have a question also about the, by the way, in the town, fiduciary responsibility is really one of our most important goals, right? We're protecting the taxpayers' money. And, we've hired internal auditors on this stuff, so we will be sure when we go forward with this. Everybody's, comments and opinion are certainly taken into consideration with us. As far as the boat building, right? I'm a hands-on guy. Do you all have a line on different tools that could be used? Now, this is more of a minutia question, and I know boat building is not, you just, first of all, can't have anyone do it, and second of all, you have to have a pretty serious set of equipment for that. Hand tools, power tools, and did you take into consideration electric service required to run such an operation?
Yeah, we took into consideration the electric service. Yes, we also a 400 amp service for the building. We also we have there is a local steel shop who has been donated to them a full wood shop, and he has no use for it. So he's just holding on to it to make a donation at some point. But I personally am very familiar with the woodworking equipment necessary for building boats, and it's actually surprisingly little. It's a lot of hand tools, band saws, planers, joiners, but
right.
There's not a lot.
Okay.
And it won't take up a lot of room, but we're pretty up to speed on this.
Good. I know that's more of a minutia question. Want to make sure that we had that in our sights as well, because if we put this together, we certainly want to get tools, and they can be expensive. It's an expense.
Sure.
But
just to add, Tommy John, it's kind of interesting because you go up to Maine and their boat building school, and they have two trains of thought on how to do this. One is the quick build, but the other are people who want to learn how to do it in sort of traditional ways with traditional tools. And it's really kind of interesting to see that difference. So your point's well taken. But it's really interesting, and I agree with you, Mark, how few tools. When I saw people, they're working by hand. They're doing lap street type boats with hand tools. It's really kind of fast. Some people want to do that, and some people don't. It depends on the program you develop around boat building, I think. So it's just pure fun. That's all.
Which school of thought do you subscribe to?
I like the woodworking by hand. I think that gives you a sense of great pride that you've built something with your hands, and then you take it out and you sail it, and I think that's most of the kind of people that I ran into up there. That's how they felt. They liked their tradition of building, old lap streak and dollies and things like that, and then take it out and sail the thing that they built basically by hand. It was kind of nice. But I digress.
To the North Maritime folks, which school of thought do you all subscribe to?
Well,
I guess, what? Actually, we'll get to that later. We don't need to hash that out now, but I think the more salient issues are the ones that the supervisor brought up, and we need to, like I said earlier, do our due diligence on this. I like the plan. I like the fact that we are honoring maritime history in North Sea, the Southampton and area, and raising awareness, of our connection to the that surrounds us. So thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so just quickly, my husband's father was a very famous boat builder for clam boats on the Great South Bay, and he built many, many clam boats in his garage. So I can certainly see a real boat building, whether it's a business or showing people how to do it, to be able to go on in that space. But just a couple other things in the hopes that we get all these other issues and questions answered. Just going through your budget, and I'll be real quick. You have some fundraisers for in season, and then some other fundraisers for off season, but you didn't include weddings in the off season. Just thought plenty of people get married in the off season, so you might want to include that. And also, as for the boats, were you thinking of selling them? I know you said something about building some for your sailing team, but I'm sure that people would love to purchase boats built at the North Sea Maritime Center.
And that thought is certainly what happens out in East Hampton at the boat builder thing, and it's very successful. And that certainly could be a component.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. If we could take a hard look at the sustainability of the income after the fact, there to me doesn't seem enough activity to produce the monies that are going to be necessary to continue this on after it's built. I love the project. I think it's a great vision. I'm a little worried that it becomes an event space after the fact, because that's one of the quick ways to generate some income. So I would just like to see a few more ideas on how you can generate income to be a little more sustainable.
We are obviously working on that, and we're not looking to have an event space as the main revenue source, nor the main activity. And bear in mind, we live here. We don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
We want nice, quiet events so people can enjoy the harbor. But I also think that some of our revenue streams are they're kind of understated, in that the sailing school, which benefits the youth enormously and teaches them to become self-confident. We have experience knowing that could be a much larger number. That's really our real strength, and that's really tied into the water so perfectly. The boat building's not going to make any money, but paddle boards and kayaking, this is great summer activity, healthy activity that will bring people to the property. So we recognize we've got to work on that, but we didn't want to overstate what we knew we could do in the early years. Again, I've had a lot of experience with the junior sailing, and I know how it works and how successful it will be. So thank you for your thoughts.
Great, thank you.
Mark, you had mentioned something earlier about boat slips, and maybe like sunset cruises or something like that. Are you guys looking to take some of the slips we have at the marina there?
Yes, we actually, if you look at the site plan, you see the two northernmost slips we had our eye on, and there's two reasons for it. The youth sailing with, let's say, 12 little boats out in the harbor and 2 people in a boat. You see the on the left side, you see the North Sea Maritime boat slips.
Yeah.
On the screen. That's over right near the hatchery.
But we have, are those already taken though? We'd have to kick out the
No, they are taken, and we don't need them now, but we will need them in the future. And let me explain why. The sailing program would actually not have its boats at the dock where all the motorboats go back and forth all the time. There would be a barge out in the middle of the harbor, out of the channel, and the 12 boats would be hauled up on there. And we would simply have a safety boat kept at that slip that ferried the students out to the center of the harbor so they could practice, learn, sail out of the channel. So we need a slip for that. And I thought we'd acknowledge that early. The second slip was we expect someone to donate us a boat that would be suitable for harbor cruises, Peconic Bay cruises. We almost had one 2 years ago, and we couldn't because we weren't there yet, but it will happen. And that'll be another water access opportunity. So yes, we realize that the slips are rented now, but we're asking that we can give us consideration because we are going to need them.
Right.
First, we need
It's
one
just that
for
not only
safety.
is everything rented, we have I think a 10-year wait list.
I don't think that's accurate because I knew
Okay.
people
I
got
hope
in
you're
last
right.
year.
I heard though there is a very long wait list for this facility. I could be wrong, but I'd have to talk to Kristen Doulos, our Parks Director, but
Right.
not to say that it's not possible, but that's my understanding. This year was a big year for boating with the pandemic.
Yes.
I think there was a lot of pressure. What is you have a couple tent sites shown here, and then you
Pardon me?
also you
On
have
tent sites, yes.
you also
Yes.
have a future 30 by 30 boat storage building.
Yes, I mentioned that as I spoke earlier, but the tent sites, I thought we would acknowledge up front that there are a couple of locations that are suitable to set up tents if there was an outdoor event. And I thought we'd just say, all right, this is where they could be and the size, and that would work. And it would be not set up all summer long, be set up for an event. The boat storage building adjacent to the Southampton History parking lot would be to store completed boats for the winter time and that kind of thing. And it could be accessed very easily directly from the Southampton History property parking lot.
Okay. I can't, it looks like it might be blocking and I don't know where exactly it is on the site, whether it's blocking an entry or an exit, but
No,
what is in
nothing.
that?
No.
What's in that space right now? It's just grass?
Yes.
Okay. And then is it possible to share screen of the layout for the first and second floor? Because I had questions about the office space as well, and it's hard to do it without seeing it. It just seemed like there were two offices, and I didn't understand why you needed two offices.
I can do it this way. Does that help?
It's not great.
No, I'm sorry.
Do you have
It in your packet, Supervisor, we got.
Yeah, no, maybe I'll be able to share a screen and then we can talk about it that way. Let me see if it'll let me. We'll try this. See if this works. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
All right. So, and I don't know if I could zoom in here. I can. All right. So this is the first floor. There's a gallery, some
Right.
storage. There's a boat building area.
Yep.
And outdoor activities office, kitchen, janitor, and then another office here. And I didn't know exactly why two offices were necessary. It seemed like a pretty big office space. It's 25 by 21.
The full lecture.
Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, the office, that would really be the executive director's office, files, all of those kinds of things. There could be a secretary, there could be other bodies in there periodically. The outdoor activities office there could be lectures, there could be small classes, there could be there could be activities like organizing the sailing school would be run out of there. The paddle boards would be run out of there.
Okay.
So that's kind of what that would be. And the summer camp things run out of there. Then upstairs, the classroom up there, that would be if there was a navigation class, a seamanship class. I mean, things like this. That could be a multi-purpose room for small groups of 10 people, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I had no question about the classroom because you had mentioned lectures and things like that.
Right.
And then this is the apartment here.
Yes.
It looks like a one bedroom.
Exactly. Very minimal, 477 square feet.
Right. Which again, I just don't know if it's allowable. I think it's a good idea. I just don't know if it's permitted. So.
Well, I think Sheila found some good homework on that we've been kind of relying on.
I've been looking at the actual CPF law, which is going to be the controlling document. It's a little gray. Let's figure out what I think. Fred Thiel, Assemblyman Thiel, is probably the best person to turn to there. I'm just going to ask maybe, let me stop screen sharing here. Maybe Lisa can reach out and find out whether it's permissible or not. I mean, it has to be consistent historically. It's possible that it can be rebuilt as an historic apartment. I just don't know if it can be occupied as an apartment. So let Lisa sort that out.
Fair enough.
I'll follow up with Fred. I have had some preliminary discussions with him about the apartment, but I will follow up with him again.
And Lisa, do we have to amend the project plan at all? Because this wasn't purchased. This was purchased as an open space purchase, not as a historic purchase. But we've already put in quite a bit of money already into the historic restoration.
I'll go back and review the second resolution regarding the landmarking to see if we changed the designation to historic. I mean, it's a broader category actually, because it's also going to be used for recreation. So I'll make sure that the resolution that we have in place is accurate and up to date.
Okay. And the events and things like that, I know that's come up as issues before in terms of how many events can happen on a CPF property. Are there any limitations in terms, because that could impact their fundraising abilities?
It could, and generally right now, for example, at Nathaniel Rogers' house, we only allow 4 events per year. And that is consistent with the town code as far as special events on town-owned properties. And a facilities use permit and sometimes a special event permit can be required. I do know that we do not allow weddings at CPF properties. We don't allow farm stand or farmers markets, that kind of thing. And I did have a fairly recent discussion with Fred Thiel about the whole fundraising issue, because the maintenance and ongoing operation of these historic properties is obviously it's a tough issue. And we would like to be able to have local groups take over these properties and run them in a way that's consistent with the CPF law. So that's something that, is being looked at, in terms of what kinds of fundraising can be allowed, and whether just as a general principle on historic properties, we can have someone live on a property. I can't say right now that there's any imminent changes, but it's definitely high up on the consideration, the radar screen.
Are we allowed some flexibility there? Because like weddings may be an important aspect of fundraising for this property. Are we allowed to allow weddings, or is that something that's forbidden?
It's not allowed right now because it's not related to the purpose of the acquisition.
Okay, and what about, like they had mentioned, which I also thought was a great idea, some sort of maritime festival or some craft show that was related to the maritime industry?
That's probably not as gray an area. If it's related to the purpose of the purpose of the acquisition, a historic building used in conjunction with the maritime history of the area, boat building, water uses, North Sea history. I think if it can fall under that, then it's, we look at it on a case-by-case basis, but it's probably going to be okay. A wedding, doesn't unfortunately have any relationship to why we purchased the building, although it would probably be a good fundraising source.
And what about concessions like food trucks? Like that would be a great place to go to have lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that could be allowed or no?
Well, I think we'd have to look at it more specifically, what the exact proposal is, if it could be considered kind of an accessory use to the main use, I'd have to really have more details on that.
Okay, all right. That could be.
May I jump in here a minute? I went back to my phone and looked up where I had that Bridgehampton Rogers quote. And basically, I spoke with John Eilertson, who was then president of the Bridgehampton Historical Society. He said that they considered restoring the living space. They would have been able to do so, but they needed archive space more than living space. So they didn't choose to restore the living space. He says, but they could have. And then up in the CPF acquisition rules, which Sheila read a little bit, it said the steward may, in the course of restoring the premises, restore the existing innkeeper's apartment, which I guess in this case would be the house, and thereafter use it as housing for employees of or independent contractors employed by the steward, provided that there should be a separate agreement between the steward and the town about this particular living space and person living there. So in other words, it sounds like it's possible.
It does sound possible if that's accurate. But then I have to question whether that apartment is laid out. Is that the historic apartment? Do we know?
Yes. Yes.
It is. Okay.
That's where they lived, and
they lived there.
Okay.
I was there. Lots of
times.
times.
Lynn played there as a young girl. This is
and they
house.
They actually also had living quarters in part of the second story area in the boat shed part. They also had bedrooms over there.
All right. So again, Lisa can look at this issue and see if it's appropriate. But it sounds like it may be. I just don't know what you're quoting from because that's not the CPF law itself. But that might be from the opinions committee or something.
I think, Jay, that's from the stewardship agreement for the Nathaniel Rogers house.
Okay.
Well, and it's something called Rules and Regulations for CPF Acquisition and Stewardship. That's
Yes.
what we heard a little bit from before, and it was adopted by the town board 2011. Author was Mary Wilson.
Okay. Sounds good.
So it's worth, it really would be worth examining that pretty thoroughly. And Mark
Agreed.
and I did once speak to Theo about what things we could do and not do. And the upshot of it was, we went back and forth, but he said the matter of aligning the historic purpose of the Tupper Boathouse with statutes and policies of Southampton Town and the Community Preservation Fund falls under the jurisdiction of the town. He was more or less saying, don't keep coming back and asking. Talk to the town and figure it out.
All right. Well, I'll leave it to Lisa. Lisa will advise us on that. So.
Okay. That sounds good.
I hope the answer is consistent with what you just read. All right.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to present to us. Again, I think the ideas are wonderful. I really do. I want to see it happen. I want to be as helpful as possible. Of course, it's a town board decision and community decision. And obviously, everything has to be by the book. That goes almost without saying. So, but it's really creative. And really promising in terms of what the future holds for this building. So again, thank you all for donating your time to get us to this point.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all, and also Lisa, please stay in touch as we can help fill in the blanks and meet with you or Fred or anyone else we need to. This is, as you know, this is very important to us.
Understood, and thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Up till now.
Thank you, Ann, and everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so while they exit, I think the next item for our work sessions, my guess is going to be updates.
Yes.
We're up to updates. I don't have a lot. We did the Ryan Murphy presented earlier regarding the nor'easter and COVID. I'll remind everyone that early voting has begun for the November 2nd election. Saturday, October 23rd is when it began. It will continue till Sunday of Halloween, October 31st. The only location is at the Stony Brook Southampton campus. I think everybody knows the location there, but the times do vary day to day. Our town website actually has more information on that. So if you're trying to figure out what times it's open, I think you can find it through the town's website. If not, I'm sure the Board of Elections has that information. We did hold our first hearing on the preliminary 2022 budget last Tuesday. There's a second hearing scheduled for November 9th at 1 p.m. We invite the public to weigh in on the budget for next year. It was a complicated budget with our rising population, and I did my best working with the Comptroller's Office to meet the rising needs of the community without burdening the taxpayers. And of course, the other night we did pass the freeze on assessments, and I appreciate the support from the board. As I mentioned the other day, I'm hearing from the state that that window that we look at, which is sort of June of 2020 to June of 2021, they're looking at an average increase in our property values of about 19%, a very big jump in assessed valuation. We're doing some analysis to see if that was across the board or whether some areas went up more than others. We don't have that data yet, a little bit, but it's possible that some areas went up by 30, 40, 50%, while others maybe went up by very little, or 10 to 20%. It looks like property values went up across the town during the pandemic, but some areas likely went up faster than others. So we're going to continue to get that data, and then we'll come back to you. We also, I'm going to make another push with Assemblyman Field to get Albany next session to give us the tools we've asked for. We want a homestead exemption, and we want a regulator to prevent changes in assessment by more than 5% in a given year from market conditions. So we'll try one more time and hope Albany hears our plea and gives us the tools that we need. Other than that, I have really no other updates. Do you guys have any updates?
I don't.
Today.
So Jay, just real quick, last Friday, I got to go to Remsenburg-Spionk Elementary School. It was the kickoff of their Red Ribbon Week. Councilman Bouvier and I were both invited. John unfortunately had another commitment that day. John, they missed you very much, and they said the Thanksgiving feast is right around the corner. So hope to see you then. But it was a great.
It must have been fun for you, Rick. To be able to present with your wife. So we were ably represented. So thank you for that, and my apologies to them. I really wanted to be there, but I'm going to take you up on the next one.
Okay. I appreciate that. It was great to be around the kids again. We're a gym full of, kids. We were all wearing our masks, got to give a proclamation to the staff. And they have a big pledge board for Red Ribbon Week. It's a commitment to a drug-free lifestyle. So all the kids could write their notes on the board and sign up for that. Yeah, it was a nice thing. It's one of the things we get to do that really makes us feel good about, our community. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And last night I got to go to the 10th annual Veterans Dinner given by the Patriots Club at Southampton High School. We were able to honor two veterans, Mr. Muller and Mr. Hunter, both over 100 years old. And also to honor a recently deceased veteran, Mr. Flanagan, who had Lee Zeldin's office presented him with a flag that had flown over the Capitol. So it was a nice event. Senator Palumbo was there and Jesse Warren was there. Everybody had a proclamation for the veterans. It was a nice day. It's good to see the veterans and the kids all working together. It was a nice dinner. So it was a nice night.
Any other updates? Anyone? John, Julie?
We're all shaking our heads.
All right. Let me, just looking for something here. If I can find it. Yeah, maybe this is it. So let me, I'm going to try to share my screen. Can you guys see this video?
Yep.
This is just to give you a little flavor of what Flying Point Road looks like, or looked like yesterday. I talked about it earlier. So that's heading north, and you can see Mecox is sort of just getting pushed across the road. I hope that helps. You guys could see that, right?
Yeah.
So I spoke about that earlier, that we're trying to get the cut open and take some of that pressure off. And, with another weather event coming, it's likely to get worse. So, hopefully they'll get that cut open and the water will be able to subside a bit. All right. Anything else from anyone? All right, we do have, I think we have executive session. Initially, I was going to try to have the police chief on to talk about the PBA contract negotiation related to body cameras, but I'm going to push that till next week. And because the chief would like one additional week there. So was there anything else though that we needed to do in executive session?
I didn't have anything besides that.
And there's no personnel, so then maybe we don't need the executive session.
It's saying contracts, but if Jim doesn't have anything,
No, that was, I put that on, the contract that was the contract with the PBA.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's plural. That's all I was saying.
That was the bargaining agreement. So, all right. In which case, then we don't need executive session. So I'll then make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Lofstad.